Kia ora and welcome to the Baptist People podcast, where we shine a light on some of the interesting, motivated and dedicated people from our faith community. I'm Christine Stride, and today I'm talking with Susan Osborne, who is the President of the Baptist Union of Churches of New Zealand. Is that right, Madam President? Have I got your title correct?
I think you have, yes, or maybe just the Baptist Union of New Zealand, but yeah.
Well, Susan, you've almost completed your year as President of the Baptist Union. Was it how you thought 2024 would look for you?
No, actually, it was very different. Yeah. In 2020, we finished our role after 45 years or so with the Missionary Society, New Zealand Baptist Missionary Society, Arotahi, and we moved down to Wellington, and we located in a very lovely spot called Titahi Bay, and I just relaxed and recovered from 45 busy years, and I was quite enjoying pretty much doing nothing. And then I felt a wee nudge, and I felt God maybe wanted to get me a bit involved in something else. Anyway, I got a call from someone saying, "Oh, would you like to be the president of the Baptist Union? No, would you consider putting your name forward for being the president of the Baptist Union?" And I had to laugh kind of behind my hands, because it's not a very spiritual thing to do. And so anyway, I thought, well, gosh, maybe this is what God is wanting me to do, but I really didn't want to do it. You know, this was just not on my bucket list at all. I might be maybe taking a woman's Bible study or two or something I could maybe do, but no. And I felt very much like Moses and had plenty of objections like him. And also Jeremiah, who, when God called him to be a prophet, he said, "Oh no, God, no, I can't. I'm much too young, and no one's going to listen to me." But of course, that wasn't my problem. My problem was no one was going to listen to me because I'm too old.
With age comes wisdom.
Yeah, but anyway, nobody else was willing to put their name forward, and I was
Susan, you're not selling it for the next person.
I've got him in place.
You've done it
already.
Sold
it to him, yes. He's in place.
Great.
No, I will by the end of this, though, have sold it, yes.
Okay, so have you achieved what you wanted to?
Well, only partially, and I am a bit disappointed in what I haven't been able to achieve, but I guess I'm only one person with 24 hours in one day. But I really wanted to visit as many pastors and churches as possible, and I have done that, 30,000 kilometres around New Zealand.
Wow.
In about 9 months. Yeah, so I've been around the place. But I really wanted to visit two main groups of churches: the rural churches, the churches out there that no one goes to, Gisborne, Greymouth, those Kaitaia, and the ethnic churches. And it was in that I managed to do most of the churches on the edges, but I was unable to connect with as many ethnic churches as I really would have liked to. So that was a bit of a disappointment, but I am pleased. And what a privilege it is, every time I went to a new area, I once again thanked God for the privilege of being the president and being able to kind of knock on the door of any Baptist church and say, "Hi, I'm Susan Osborne, president of the Baptist Union. I'd like to hear your story." Because that was the kaupapa that I went with, to listen to them and to hear their story of how they got to just where they were. So,
and how valuable for them as well to be listened to.
Well, I loved it. That was that was great.
Now I'm going to ask you about some of the highlights of this year for you.
Yep.
What were they?
Oh, okay. Well, the first highlight, I was just going to say, that was one of the real highlights, was being able to go out and about and hear and just to listen to them. And what stories I heard. That's amazing. When I started this job, I thought, oh, the Baptists, well, we're the Baptists, like every other church group, declining in numbers, feeling a bit, what can I do? But I've come away, I've finished all my visiting, and oh my, God is at work in our churches. And it is so exciting to see. Even in the littlest churches, God is at work. And I just loved hearing stories of gospel renewal right around our country. I think of one church here in Wellington, quite a small church, maybe sometimes 30, sometimes maybe 40 odd people there. And one Sunday, they were kind of pretty much the makeup of most of our Baptist churches, family or two, a lot of older people and a few middle-aged couples. Yeah. And anyway, a couple walk in, and they didn't quite fit the kind of the demographic of that church. They had tattoos all over their bodies. And anyway, they came in and sat down. And when they were talking to the pastor afterwards, the pastor said, "Oh, so why? How come you ended up here this morning?" And they said, "God told us to go to church." And and he said, "Oh, just go to that church down the road, that Baptist church down the road." So they came, and they came the next week and the next week, and it wasn't long before they made a commitment to Jesus and were baptized.
Wow.
And when they were baptized, they were asked, "So why, you're a wee bit different to a lot of us here. And so why did you decide to stay here?" And they said, "Because you loved us." Now, how simple is that? And it just says to me, if I loved everyone who came into our church, if we loved people who came into our church, no matter what they looked like, and no matter who they were, maybe that would be a help. And certainly in this church. And this couple have gone on to want to, with the church's support, they've opened a kind of youth centre in the little group of shops just across the road from the church. And they're hoping to be able to talk to young people out of making the bad decisions that they made when they were younger. And it's just a wonderful story of a simple acts of love.
Yeah, God is good.
Yeah. A group in another church, a youth group, who weren't very big, but they were trying to make an effort in the local schools. And there's one particular, a brother and sister who who are bringing new people every week to the youth group. And they're not even Christian. They come from a Hindu family. And yet they are part of that youth group, and they just love it, and they're bringing all their friends along as well. We just sometimes have to stand back and let God work, I think. A wee bit like at Eastside. I'm sure you've heard that story a few times, like I have.
I have. Tell it again.
These Congolese refugees God has gifted them this group of families, refugees from the Congo, and just because of a simple act of kindness from one of the members of their congregation, picking up a woman who was struggling home in the rain. And just amazing. I've ended this year just refreshed with the knowledge that God uses every little thing that we do to bring his kingdom to come in our world. Yeah. And I think the one I had a question once after I finished speaking at a church, and they said, it was a question about kind of what's the Baptist Union really all about? And I was so pleased to be able to tell the story of that I'd heard just 2 weeks earlier about Bethlehem and Tauranga Central Church, and the amazing way that they have just come together and supported the Bethlehem supporting Tauranga Central to grow young and to just inject a new way of doing things. And I just love that story, and the humility shown in the leadership of Craig and Brian is just amazing. And what an example for all of us to lead with humility and being willing to give up what we have and share what we have. I love that story.
Okay, Susan, what about some of the challenges that you've encountered this year?
Oh, well, one of the first ones.
Now, remember, Susan, we only have 20 minutes. So
no. I had to think hard about this.
Okay, good.
The biggest challenge I had was scheduling meetings with the pastors.
Very busy people.
I know, they're very busy people. And so that was probably the hardest part of my job, I think, was scheduling all those meetings. Of course, I did want to schedule as many as possible. And then there was sitting too long and not getting enough exercise. So hence a slightly heavier. I carry a bit more weight at the end of this year than I do at the
There must have been lots of cups of tea and coffee.
And everyone makes dessert for you. Oh, special occasion.
Oh, terrible.
I know. Well, my body is bearing the brunt of that, but I'm walking again, so that's good. And as I mentioned before, I was quite disappointed that I didn't engage with as many of the ethnic groups as I would have liked to. And I think I was quite disappointed in a number of our pastors and churches don't have a lot of trust in the Baptist Union, and particularly they kind of focus it on the support centre, kind of forgetting that they themselves are the Baptist Union of New Zealand, and the support centre can't do anything unless they get the say-so from the churches. And there seems to be quite a lot of fear out there that somehow, the union is going to just kind of go somewhere where they don't want to go. And I'm not quite sure where it's coming from, but
Do you think that's a communication issue? I mean, we at the National Sports Centre could do better in communication, relationships.
No, maybe relationships. I think it's more probably relational, because I think, I think it's probably more. And I think that has been a real plus. I've had, I think that's one good part of the role of the president, is to be able to visit so many of our churches and build a kind of a relationship with the wider body there. Yeah.
So, Susan, you've probably had a lot of driving time, flying time, sitting time. What's God been saying to you this year?
Well, one thing I have, I think, the first thing and the major thing he said to me, which was quite challenging, is that God is at work in churches that I personally disagree with the way they operate and their theology. And that says a lot to me about who God is, the size of God. And he's so much bigger, and he's not limited by what I believe and what I think is right and what I think is not right. He gets on and does what he does. And I love that. And I like to think of that whenever I encounter it, even now, that God is not limited by the things that limit me and my own beliefs. And I think I have learnt, and I trust that it will continue to be an aspect of my life, is the art of listening. I'm not a natural listener. I'm a bit of a yabberer. And so I had this wonderful advice from my friend Greg Motu when I was talking just after I was kind of crowned the president. What am I going to do when I go and visit all these people? And what am I going to say to them? And he said, just listen to the people. Oh, I just love that of Greg. So, and of the whole Māori kaupapa as well, that just listening. And I do trust that what I have learned this year in the art of listening will remain with me. And carry on.
Mm.
Yep, yep.
So you did a lot of listening, but what
Yes, yeah.
message did you actually take around the country to all the different churches?
Yeah, I tried not to say too much when I was visiting the pastors, because I really did want to listen to where they were and things that concerned them. But when I was speaking on a Sunday, I had to come up with something to
Yeah,
say.
yes,
So,
of course.
yeah, I kind of framed it around, thanks to Charles, an interview kind of style, which worked really well for me. And some of the things I've said today, I covered in that. But basically, I've got it down in a nice little sermon kind of package under kind of, we're all made in the image of God. Every one of us is made in the image of God. And the first point I take from that is that we can learn from other cultures. In New Zealand, we're faced with so many different cultures, and how we respond to those cultures can be really important. And yet we're naturally suspicious of people who are different to us. And it's not easy to learn other ways of doing things. But I've lived cross-culturally for 40 odd years, and I've learnt such a lot from other cultures, been not only learnt from them, but been challenged by the way we do things. And also I've learnt to read the Bible quite differently because of that. And then we're made in the image of God, and that truth needs to lead and inform, that's the right word, inform our response to those we don't agree with.
Okay.
This world is full of conflict, and every day we encounter so many challenging issues in our society. Some we agree with, some we don't. And quoting Bible verses is not the way to kind of deal. Well, I don't think it gets you very far. Someone once said to me, as I was talking with her about a particular issue, and she said, we need to respond in a way that draws people to Jesus, not pushes them away. And I thought that was such a really good kind of summary of how we need to learn to respond to these issues. And it reminded me of the bracelets we used to wear back in the day, WWJD, what would
yes.
Jesus do?
Yes.
And when I was sharing that once, someone said to me, yeah, but sometimes perhaps we also need to ask the question, why would Jesus do it? And I thought that was a very thought-provoking question.
Indeed.
Why would Jesus respond in that way? But it challenges us to go beyond just what we understand and realize, again, that God is just much bigger than we are. And I came back when I'm sharing this to Acts 10 and Peter, when he gets his whole Jewish world blown up when God tells him to eat this forbidden food. And he's busy quoting Bible verses to God, and God says, oh, no, no, I've got something, no, you listen to me, Peter, listen, this is what I want you to do.
Yeah.
And and I think so often we can miss what God is doing just because of what we think God should be doing, or what we are familiar with God doing. So, yeah.
When you say, Susan, that, just back to your first answer,
Yeah.
you read the Bible differently because of the exposure you've had to so many different cultures.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit, or give an example?
I can certainly give an example, yes, because yes, my main example is the kind of role of Boaz in the story of Ruth and Boaz.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Boaz is preached in the West as a wonderful example of a redeemer, someone who took pity on this poor widow, and both widows of Naomi and Ruth. And we are told, this is part of the role within the Jewish society. They have these relational redeemers that will help people if they fall on hard times, and take them under their wing and look after them. Well, for me, I call Boaz the reluctant redeemer, because it took him from the first verse of chapter 2 until the end of chapter 3, and a lot of months and hoo-ha going on in between before he actually stepped up and did that role.
Right.
It's mentioned in the first verse 1 of chapter 2 that he has this relationship with Naomi, But it's not until much later, after all sorts of, as I said, shilly-shallying, carrying on, shoe throwing in the marketplace, all sorts of stuff, that he actually steps up. Now, people say, well, of course he wasn't the closest one. And I say, well, and what did he do to give the closest one a kick in the pants to do something? And I have this particular view because in Bangladesh and India and many other cultures, they may not have a place, a specific redeemer role within their relationships, but if you fall on hard times, you will always be taken in by your wealthier relations. Always.
Right.
You will always be welcome. And that person just has a responsibility for you. And I would never have understood it that way, Boaz, in the way that I do now, if I had not lived in that society for so many years and seen it in action.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for explaining that. Now, I note on your notes that you have one more thing to say about the message that you take.
Yes. That we're all made in the image of God, and we need to, but I encourage people to relax in the knowledge that we are all beloved of God. I read this book, Henri Nouwen's book on Life of the Beloved, a few years ago when I was feeling a bit exhausted and under the weather and a bit battered and bruised. And I found it so enriching in my own life to just sit in the knowledge that I am God's beloved. And I know that God's loved me since I went to Sunday school and sang Jesus Loves Me. This I know. But acknowledging that I am beloved of God has got somehow a deeper meaning for me. It's been very, very healing and enriching and strengthening in my relationship with God. But it doesn't end there. That is so everybody is beloved of God. And people, our neighbours are, our families are, and people overseas are. Everybody in this world is beloved of God. And so again, that informs our response to them, that we need to be dealing with them and seeking to share that belovedness and God's deep love for each one of them in our lives. Yep.
Thank you, Susan. I could listen to you. I'm sure you've got thousands of stories, and I could listen to you for ages. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Thanks, Christine. It's been lovely to see you.